Hello and welcome to Post-Burnout.com interviews. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. My name is Aaron Kavanagh and I'm the website's founder and editor-in-chief. This is our website's podcast where we publish the full interviews from our site's articles and sometimes release exclusive episodes. In this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews, the Irish indie folk singer-songwriter Pat Carey discusses his new musical project, How I Became a Wave. How it differs from the other projects he's been involved with in his decades-long career. How I Became a Wave's recently released self-titled debut album. The near decade-long preparation for the record. The inspiration of poetry on the project. His time with the Cork rock group The Hard Ground. Sylvia Plath, and How I Became a Wave's upcoming nationwide tour. If you want to see How I Became a Wave live, they'll be playing at Coughlin's in Cork on April 12th. They'll be doing both a matinee and an evening show. I believe the evening show is sold out, but there's still tickets for the matinee show. Then on April 17th, they'll be playing at the Unitarian Church in Dublin. On April 19th, they'll be performing at Prim's Bookshop Bibliotherapy in Kinsale. On April 30th, they'll be performing as part of the Ghostlight sessions at the Ballard Arts Centre in Ballaboofi. On May 16th, they'll be performing at Levi's Corner House in Ballythehob. Then on June 4th, they'll support Lisa O'Neill at the Galway Folk Festival at the Town Hall Theatre in Galway. Tickets for all of those shows are available in the description of this episode. Thank you very much and enjoy. Hi Pat, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Can I ask if you're Aaron or Aaron?
Aaron, Aaron, yeah. I appreciate you asking because yes, I've heard the alternate pronunciations. So I always just tell people it's like, oh, it's just like Moses' brother. That's like how I
Yeah.
describe the name.
You're putting
Right?
yourself right up there. You're dead right too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't think I'm not a biblical scholar by any means, but I don't think Aaron from the Bible is the most it's the best
There's,
character.
yeah, I know what you mean. He's probably more of a supporting character.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not like Jesus. That'd be ideal.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I hear you. You still retain some sort of sense of modesty. Fair play.
Yes, yes. How are you doing, man? And it's interesting to talk to you now because as we're speaking, it's the eve of the release of your album, which obviously you've been pouring so much time into. Um, maybe we could start with that. Just how you're kind of feeling now. Just in anticipation. Is it like a kid on Christmas, or is it more anxiety inducing?
It's somewhere in the middle, is the honest God truth. It's probably not like a super exciting answer because it's been so long in the kind of the gestation period has been so long. Um, I think that the main thing as I come up to it is like relief, um, relief, a certain sense of pride, but not necessarily pride about what I've done, but the fact that I've gotten here. I think more than anything else, I am excited, but it's like a kind of it's like a slow burn excited. I think it's like a slow release. And the funny thing is when you release an album, in particular when like it's the How I Became a Wave debut album, so it's not as though the whole world knows that I exist or that the music exists. And the when you release an album in that context, it's quite kind of like nebulous, you know?
Hmm.
It just means
Yep.
that now people can hear your music, whereas they could only hear a few songs maybe before. And you don't get that instant sense of like feedback or gratification, you know? It's not the same as waking up and finding a present underneath the Christmas tree, you know? It's like, you know, it's like more like waking up and writing down underneath the Christmas tree, there's a kind of a thing that says like congratulations, you know? Like, oh,
Actually, actually, the simile I was thinking of when you were explaining that was more so it's like being a parent on Christmas Day, where you're waiting for the kids to open the present. You're like, are they going to hate this or love it?
it's
I
like
put so
that
much
sense
effort
of
into it.
sense of anticipation. Although I I and I think that's what the general feeling is. I think that you're right. There is that kind of sense of like, oh, how what's this thing going to actually be like in real life or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't have um I think that the music is going to be out there for the people who want to find it, and I think the people who like are supposed to find it, I hope will be able to find it. It's, you know, I'm very happy with what I've kind of created. It's what I wanted to make, I think, and so it's not that I think that like, you know, it's the best thing in the world ever, but I'm happy with what I've done, and I just want to be able to kind of like spread that as far and as wide as I can.
Well, let's talk about the debut then. So it's self-titled. It's how it became a wave. I was listening to it today. It's very good. What I was wondering is like, obviously you're doing the thing that like a lot of artists do now in preparation for an album or even an EP release, which is, do a year of singles and then kind of release the record. For yourself, I mean, was so obviously you recorded the album as one piece. So did you have it in mind that it should be kind of, I guess, consumed as such, like it should be listened to as a single piece? And if so, how did kind of breaking that up into singles feel?
Yes, it's for me, it's like it's an album and it's a piece of work, and it's all certainly from even though it took so long, from a writing perspective, it's supposed to be one body of work, I think, and there's
Yeah.
lots of different kind of like linking themes, whether it's musically or lyrically, throughout the album. That's for me anyway. It's not. I'm not saying that everyone should be able to find all of these kind of threads and links, but from a writing perspective, there was links the whole way through. In terms in terms of the singles, it is quite unusual to kind of pluck them out of the context, and then even for them to be received out of context, it's you have to kind of become okay with that
Mm.
almost. Do you know what I mean? Certainly, again, from even from an industry perspective, um, it was the right thing to do because I needed to be able to introduce the project to people, I think. But it does take a certain amount of getting used to of being like, you're going to consume this as a standalone thing right now, even though you know something might be coming, but you're going to consume it as a standalone thing. That takes a bit of getting used to.
Yeah, and what for you, I guess, like for this project, I mean, how do you feel it kind of differs? Because obviously, you'd been in the project before. The Hard Ground is probably your most well known, but
Mm.
I know you've been playing for, I don't know, like would it prefer to say decades now, or is it that long?
It's fair to say decades, correct? Yeah.
So for you, how it became a wave? How does it kind of like differ from anything you've kind of done prior?
I think it's the first time I've taken on like the full responsibility of the project and of the like the creative part of the project. Now that is with like a um eh, when I say it like I've taken on the creative lead or whatever it might be in the project, I do work with a load of musicians and a load of collaborators. But for me, this was the first time that I kind of took that sense of kind of responsibility around it and owned it and owned it in a way that I was like okay with owning it, not apologetically owning it. So that's one of the big things why this is different. Now there's like, there are different elements that come with being the owner of the responsibility of this, I think. And it can be you have to negotiate that almost because there's a certain amount of you you have to be secure in yourself or have a kind of a strong sense of what you're trying to do in order to be able to approach people who you really admire and whose work is like really fantastic and ask them to work with you.
Mm.
So that took quite a while to get to a point where I'm like, okay, I am happy with what I'm doing here. I think it's the right thing. It's what I actually do want to do, and I believe it's of a certain standard whereby I can ask um ask people to join me. So that like yeah, that's a big thing. Trying to figure yourself out and trying to be okay, with what you are doing yourself.
And when it came, you talked about like, the gestation process of kind of like having the album and sort of waiting for it to kind of come out in the world. Let's go back a step and talk about actually conceiving it then. Because
Mhm.
when it comes to like who you worked with in terms of like production, in terms of like personnel on the record, how'd you kind of come about it? Because I think one thing that's interesting about like going from kind of a collaborative project to a solo project is that it does kind of permit you, I think, a bit of a freedom to kind of like limit the instrumentation to what's just required. Whereas, like when you're in a band setting, I don't know, maybe I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel there's kind of like a requirement to make sure everyone's kind of doing something, you
I
know.
mean,
So-
like Absolutely. And there's positives and I don't say negatives, but there are different sides to it. There are different aspects to it. I think when you're with a band, you're asking everybody who's there with you to respond, and you hope that it kind of that you have enough like engagement and like personal and musical dynamics to be able to see what comes out. And that's really exciting as well, to be able to you know to be able to like contribute to that is really exciting, and I did love it when I was doing it. But on the other side of the coin, though, when I don't have like a set lineup of musicians, and it means that I have like a broader palette to be able to play with. Number one, it means that, like, as you said, I don't have to be like, what is this person going to play on this song?
Yeah,
In terms of the creation of it anyway. Certainly it means that you can broaden your horizons. It also means that you can be like, stylistically, you can be more like open. You can kind of go where you need to go, and um whether that's like as we move on into like future work, uh, you know, I don't want it to be necessarily like, oh, this is the sound. This is the sound. I think that I want to be able to kind of like break it up a little bit more and play with it. And
sure.
having collaborators like that, um, like opens that sense. And the other aspect as well about having the collaborators like that is that, I don't know, you get the breadth of their musical experience, and you like invite it in, and it can crack open the song, in ways that maybe you hadn't imagined in any sense. And I have found that like really gratifying.
And just speaking actually about the personnel. So I know, for example, you've had the record does feature, collaborators rather, you've worked with in the hard ground. So maybe if you could just talk about who you kind of brought in for what, and yeah, like maybe like who the producer was, and things like that, just in terms of like, I guess, kind of getting an idea, because I was very interested in kind of how long it actually took to just record the record, and even the
Mm.
post production, things like that, mastering. Yeah.
It was a funny kind of process. I obviously didn't plan on it taking as long as it did, Um, but I started writing first, and it was very much just like me and my guitar, and I had like ideas of where I wanted to go, and I knew that I wanted it to be like this much more intimate thing. That I didn't want it to be brash. I wanted it to be, um, I don't want to say acoustic, but I wanted to bring it really kind of down.
Hmm.
And I started working with Brian Casey in Wayfield Studios down outside of Clonakilty in Cork. And like, Brian has an amazing studio. Brian and Sarah have an amazing studio down there, amazing setup. Brian is exceptionally talented. Has worked with a load of artists that like I really admire. So I got in, and we had a bunch of sessions down there, and uh, I mean, that was the genesis of it. I think, that was the start of it. That again, that was the bit that allowed me to be like, this is legitimate. I think,
Yeah.
working with Brian, and Brian gave me the confidence to own the stuff, and it sounded fantastic. So I was, that was a great start. And then I had like a big period whereby like life got in the way.
Yeah.
Like, I hate even mentioning COVID now, because it seems like it's such a retro thing. It's like talking
Oh,
about
dude, I'm still
like,
talking to people whose like projects are still to this day being affected by that period. So
yeah,
it's
well,
yeah.
it did change things, and it changed things from a recording perspective. And like, in and around that time, I had been doing quite a bit of work in terms of collaborators. I'd been working with Cormac McCarthy. He was doing piano stuff for me, but he was also doing the arrangements and instrumentation. And then,
Not to be confused with the Blood Meridian author.
yes, no, no, no. This is a Cork pianist and composer extraordinaire. Cormac is amazing, and but he brought in like strings in a big way into a number of the songs, and so I started working with string players. But the mad thing is that like uh, because that was in and around COVID when we started doing that, like there are probably still one or two people who have played in the album who I've never met in real
Yeah.
life. It was just people recording in different places. Um, so then, yeah, as I said, after that there was kind of a big gap, and I was kept kind of plugging away, and as I said, like I have two kids. I'm married and I've got two kids, and it became more difficult to find big spaces of time where I could kind of like go into a studio and so I left it and kept on trying to write, etc., etc. And finally, it started to come back to me after a little while. Um, and I was living back in Cork, and I had been in touch with the my buddy Davy Ryan, who was the drummer in the Hard Ground, and he'd been doing some recording stuff over in his place. He had a kind of a home recording studio, and was getting like fantastic sound out of place, and fantastic work out of the place. And I was kind of saying, look, Davy, I can't do like full days, but I can do like a few hours here and a few hours there. So that was able to kickstart me back into it. Um, and but it's funny because even some of the songs that we would have done earlier on with Brian in that setting, like there was a number of years were after passing, and I kind of suddenly realized that like I sound a little bit different, even.
Okay. Yeah. Your voice
A,
dropped.
a, age started pulling on my vocal cords,
Yeah.
and but not just in terms of like what notes you're getting and things like that, but even like the timbre of your and the tone of your voice. I was listening back to some of the stuff and I was like, gee, that's really gorgeous, but like I can't, I don't necessarily sound like that now.
Did you enter a different vocal range in that time? Was it that
Uh,
dramatic?
yeah, I mean, like, oh, there was definitely like we had to re-record a couple of songs because, yeah, specifically,
Okay.
because I was like, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to
Yeah.
be able to sing that, uh, which was kind of a little bit bonkers. But it was real, and it meant not only did it mean that we have to look at a bit of re-recording of stuff, but I had to rethink some of the music because um, the change in tone in my voice required different instruments at that
Yeah.
point. It's not that it was maybe I'm making too much of it. It's not as though I sound radically different, but in my head, I was like, it's a different voice. It's more of an aged voice now,
Sure.
and it requires like a different setting. So some of the stuff on the album is the original stuff with Brian, and then uh, other parts of it are were done with Davey. So it's kind of like it was like a 10-year collaboration between two people, between three people probably. So yeah, that's how that was the length of the process. And again, that like all of that stuff brings up kind of it has different kind of challenges and things like that, and it colors the record, I think,
Yeah.
but it's like it's I don't know, that's how it was born.
But so the plan isn't to make every album a decade's worth of work. It's an
I mean, like
exceptional.
maybe I'm gonna have to start going into EPs or something like that, and maybe every five
Yeah,
years.
that's only 5 years.
Yeah, I might manage that.
I wanted to ask it seemed like from what you were saying there that the kind of like the sound that we hear on the record is very much kind of crafted in studio, and especially over so much amount of time. During COVID, obviously there aren't many opportunities to play live. So when you started performing live, with how it became Wave, was there consideration for how you translate the songs live, or was that always kind of organic? Like, was there always a consideration for how it was going to be replicated later down the line, or did you kind of have to figure that out after the fact?
Funny enough, and it's a great question. Funny enough, um, to be fair, post-COVID, we did do like a significant amount of work with Davey and bringing in other collaborators. But it was still, in a lot of ways, it was done with like more what suits the song rather than what might suit like a live experience.
Yeah,
Um, and I do speak about how my sense of the project is that like it's supposed to be a kind of a living thing all of the time. The record would be the record, the album would be the album, but when we play live, then that's it. It's not going to be note for note. I'm not looking to replicate it. They're songs that should live in different contexts, I think.
Yeah,
And when we were writing originally, like, you know, I think I even remember saying to Brian one day, it's like, look, let's think about how they might go down live, at some other point. Let's get the songs right first. And but we would have certainly got it to a point where, from a live perspective, where it works, and we have this kind of like, I've got like an amazing group of musicians that provide that sense of um like it's like a bed. It's like a
sure,
bed that I'm like able to sit into in a lot of ways, and that bed can completely change depending on where we are, uh,
sure.
where we are and what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I also have to ask, you mentioned earlier that like, with each record you kind of want it to be its own documentation. So it seems to me that like the each record's predecessor isn't going to dictate its sound. But maybe I'm thinking too ahead of time here. But do you then have consideration for how you'd kind of in a set list meld the different atmospheres and environments of the music, or is that just, or does even having consideration for those things kind of preemptively kill it? Because then you're kind of like, I don't know, if you're gonna release a record and you're like, I want it to be like this, and you go, oh, but how would I weave that later
I know
on?
what you
Like,
mean.
yeah, yeah,
I'm definitely in that space at the minute, because I have, like, that's the thing when you like write over a long period of time. I'm at the point where I'm on the eve of releasing the album, and yet I'm very much in my head, onto the next bit. Um, and like sometimes if I play some of the songs that I probably wrote in the early days, I'm like, surely people must be sick of listening to this. And like, it's crazy. Most people haven't heard. It's just
yeah,
because it's been in my head for so long. So I'm at the kind of the new writing stage, and I'm trying to negotiate that. I know I've definitely identified a number of people that I want to work with on some of the new music that won't be easily replicated. But I don't want to count them out because of that. Maybe there are other ways of adapting what we do to that. But I think I know where I'm going with this, and it's not going to be entirely dictated by the how we perform what we're doing now.
yeah. Perfect. I just have a few final questions. I'll let you go on your day, Pat. I want to ask actually about um I know the title of, if I'm correct, the title of your project comes from Mary Oliver poem, that kind of deals with the topic of stoicism. And one thing I was interested in asking you about that is, I think there's actually for the last, I don't know, probably decade, maybe more, there's been, I think, a huge discussion about men expressing emotion and sort of being able to, like there was this kind of patriarchal conception that like, men shouldn't express their emotions and things like that. I was wondering, do you find that art was one of the acceptable avenues to express emotion if you're a man? Because there was always sort of, I feel, a detachment between you as a person and the artist, if that makes sense. Like, when
Mm.
people are listening to a piece of music, they're not necessarily conceiving of you, the person. They're kind of, it sort of exists in its own world. It's very weird, the
Yeah.
decompartmentalization that your brain
Mm.
does. So, do you find that has been an avenue in which men could express themselves, or do you think
I
there's still a requirement to be stoic even as an artist?
Well, for me, when I talk about kind of stoicism, and when I talk about even that poem, the Mary Oliver poem, it's not it's not like shutting down emotions or oppressing, or anything like that. It's actually more a sense of taking responsibility for your own emotions.
Yeah,
That's where I kind of was kind of going with it. It's like, okay, you need to own this, and you need to sit in it. You need to not, like, I've spoken a bit about like how so many people are always trying to find ways of fixing things,
yeah,
finding solutions. And it's like, without getting into like the whole self-help world or anything like that. And I don't know enough about it to speak about it.
sure.
But what I'm saying is that, like, part of this album, a significant part of this album is about being sitting with what is happening, and acknowledging emotion yourself and not trying to find ways of getting out of it all of the time,
Yeah,
And that's the kind of type of stoicism that I think I'm referring to. It's kind of like sit with it. Sit
yeah,
with it, try not to run away from it. Like you'll never be able to um you'll never be able to like figure things out by constantly trying to jump over fences, I think.
sure.
So that's where I was approaching it. I do think that you also have to be careful in terms of like in terms of your own writing about how much emotion or story that you're putting in. I think you need it to be open enough that people, it's like what you said about that third dimension thing. It's like our fifth dimension or interdimensional, you know what I mean? Not the third dimension. I
I
know
didn't
that's
define the
already
dimension.
there.
I want to make that clear.
But it's the idea of you want to create a space that people can fill with their own experiences.
Yeah,
And I would hope that I can um invite people in and that there's space for people to bring their emotions to. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Without being necessarily always about like, uh, about sad songs. And like most of this album probably sounds kind of like it's sad, but it's not supposed to be a sad album. It's supposed to be an album that you can go to. I hope
I,
that
I
in a roundabout way answers your question.
well, for my interpretation, for what it's worth, I didn't find the album sad, but I did. I get what you're saying. Like there is this kind of I wouldn't say reticent, but there is this kind of like I think very windy and kind of murky atmosphere throughout, and
Mm.
it's very like windy is kind of how I describe it. I don't know, that's my
I like
adjective
that.
for the day.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't find it sad necessarily, but I found it very engaging, and it's interesting because you were obviously this project, as much as it is a musical project, is much more, or like I would say at least equally as influenced by poetry. I
Mm.
wanted to say just I brought these down just because like I thought you wouldn't believe me unless I showed you, but I I know you're a Sylvia Plath fan, so I just wanted to show that
Oh,
I was too. So
yeah.
I have a bunch of
I
her books. I
mean,
even have like her children's book, children collection there.
oh
So
my God.
I,
That's
I'm
kind of
I'm I'm
amazing.
friends with anyone who's a Sylvia Plath fan, but but I think it's a similar feeling like with good poetry where I don't know, like it's hard for me to define, but I find that sometimes the emotions aren't so much imposed, they're more kind of interpreted, and I think that's an atmosphere that I got from this record. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, that's very much I think what I was kind of trying to get at. Like there's loads of things hidden in it from my perspective,
Yeah,
but I didn't want to be putting it up in your face in terms of this is what this is about, or this is, or speaking too much about that. It's about like again, it's you need to leave space for the listener. That's a big
yeah,
thing. And in the same way with poetry, you need to leave space. You need to, number one, have like your own solid voice, but number two, you need to be able to have that accessible to people, I
yeah,
think. And which is exactly what Sylvia Plath. And the more I read Sylvia Plath, the more I'm able to take another step in and take another step
yeah,
in. But she had such a strong, like distinct voice, but also you could there are some poems with Sylvia Plath that like I'm like this is kind of a more of a happy poem, and then
yeah,
I'm being glib, and then like a year later I reread it and I'm like, oh my God, this is devastating,
yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I love Sylvie Plath's writing too, except for racism. I wish that wasn't there. Sometimes it's hard to
Yeah.
recommend her because they're like,
Also, yeah.
just excuse that, and it's really good. But we were talking about there about like sometimes you revisit like old works and you kind of get a different interpretation. I was wondering how has that ever happened to you? Because like now that you have the longevity of doing this project, like you said, I mean, this record's kind of been cooking for like about a
Mm.
decade now. So have you ever kind of gone back to some of those earlier songs and kind of like had a different realization about what it's actually about? Have you ever been like, oh, that's what I was singing about?
Like absolutely, it's actually happened quite a bit, and it's the
Yeah,
most amazing thing. It's where like again, it's where the magic bit. is for me, without sounding too corny, it's the thing of, so there's two things. There's the time that's passing, like, and songs that would have been inspired by like one person at
Yeah.
some point, like that's changed even who it's about
Yeah.
almost. Do you know what I mean? Um, they're living, breathing things, and they adapt to what I'm doing in any given moment in
Mhm.
my head, my interpretation of them. Like the original inspiration is only one part of the song, you know, and so like, and I'm careful to say that to people. It's like, look, you know, what it's about for me, or what it was about for me back then, is kind of a little bit irrelevant, you know, like what's it about right now and what's it about for you. And so it does change. There are definitely songs that are on this album that have, like, they started as one thing, and they mean something different to me now. And that's it's also the same when you work with really, really good people, that again, they're able to, like, they can shine lights into different corners of the songs that maybe you haven't discovered yet.
Perfect. I wanted to wrap up by just plugging the tour coming up. So yeah, so it's kind of so we I'm gonna have this out to kind of coincide with the tour. It starts April 12th if I'm right at Coughlin's in Cork.
Yep.
Two shows. It goes all the way till June 4th. Galway Town Hall Theatre. In between then you'll be playing Dublin, Kinsale, the Ballard Arts Centre. I didn't write down where that was. Sorry.
That's okay. Donegal. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ballydehob as well,
Yes.
Levi's
Yeah.
Corner House.
Yeah.
One thing I was really interested in the Dublin show is at the Unitarian Church, and beautiful place. If I've been there,
Mm.
I actually went. I knew someone who actually attended that church as like like
Yeah.
it's for service, and I
Yeah.
went to I think two services there one time just to check it out. And I didn't really understand what the what the religion was about, but it was very
Yeah.
nice. Everyone was very polite to me. They do tea and coffee, and everyone there is a very nice singer. So you have a
Mm.
bit of competition. All the regular things. They did the hymns,
Let's see if I can
and
get a
they
sing
did
song
all.
going. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the hymn players are great. So
Mm.
that'd be a great show. Yeah, I was wondering like what you could say about this tour and what kind of people can expect and things like that.
It'll be different every evening, whether that's like the lineup or the songs we kind of, like the flow of the songs. I think that they're all of them have a sense of intimacy. All of the venues have a sense of intimacy, and even the Dublin one in the Unitarian Church, like we'll have a big, I think there's maybe like six or seven of us on stage that evening, and so it'll be bigger, but the idea is that it'll be quiet and intimate as well. So every
Yeah,
place that we're playing on this it's about inviting people to listen rather than hitting them in the face with the
yeah.
songs. So that's what I'm going that's what I'm going for.
I also should have mentioned, sorry, the Town Hall Theatre show is supporting Lisa O'Neill. That's part of the Galway Folk Festival, I believe. I just
Yes,
wanted to
indeed.
plug that just in case people are looking for tickets for that one. But
Yeah,
again,
yeah, Lisa,
I'll link
Lisa.
all that. But it's very like it's really like I don't know, like I was looking at some of the venues you're playing, and you know, like you're saying, the intimacy there is like
Mm,
is apparent. And you know, one thing I was wondering is like because you know, I think your album has such a like not even just in the music, but even like with the artwork, you see it has a very distinct atmosphere. I think that's I've
mm.
just described it as atmospheric. I was wondering, are you going to try and replicate that in any way with the live show, or are you just kind of going to let the music do its own thing? Because I could imagine in my head a kind of visual aspect to it, like with
Yeah,
overlays or things like that, or with like projection. But
yeah,
then again, you know, one thing I'm always interested in when I'm talking to bands who don't have consistency between the venues. So you know the way sometimes like if you're playing like the same kind of size theaters or you're playing
mm,
the same size arenas or whatever, there's you can expect a continuity between the shows. What I find very
yeah,
interesting about bands who aren't that level yet or projects that aren't at that level is that each venue kind of dictates the possibility of what you can contain for a show. So I was wondering, do you
yeah.
have kind of these externalities, or is it very much just like no, we're just focusing on the music?
Well, we do have visuals, it's only, we can only do them in a limited number of
Sure.
places. I do think that we have like a sense. I think that the music does like the slowness and the slow build of the music can do a huge amount in terms of that. In
Yeah.
terms of like creating an atmosphere that isn't necessarily just about the melody or the song, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And then beyond that, like I do have this probably sounds like I'm trying to sell a load of stuff here, which I'm not, but we do have like all of the things that are associated with the project. I have like I'm very close to and have had creative input into, and that's like down to we have like homemade bookmarks and postcards and things like that
Yeah.
as merch and like little notebooks. It's all supposed to represent one kind of type of like artistic world, just different manifestations of it. And I've been working with a visual artist. I've been working with a number of visual artists, but one of the visual artists I've worked with, Leslie Spillane, based in Cork. She's doing handmade prints for us, which are
Oh,
like
cool.
they're printed with essentially seaweed.
All
Um,
right.
so there's like a continuity of like, there certainly is a continuity. The visual thing is important. Uh, you're just not able to do it in every single video.
Sure. Perfect. Thanks very much for your time, Pat. Is there anything you would like to add before we wrap up? Anything I failed to cover that you think people should
I
know?
I think that you have covered like absolutely everything, Aaron. That was a lovely chat.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it, and yeah, and I'm glad that you were able to take the time to get stuck into the music.
Perfect. And where can people find you if you want to just plug your website and things like that?
Yeah, howibecameawave.com is where you'll find all of the things. And it's funny when I'm doing gigs in front of people I don't know, I have to like really slow down and be like, my name or our name is How I Became a Wave. And people are like, what? What's the name?
Yeah, I was thinking
So,
about this. So there's these things now where I think some performances can do subtitles in real time, like as screen. So if
mhm.
someone's talking, I don't know if it's like AI or how it works, but like they interpret the text. But I'd always be too afraid to use such technology because
I know.
I'd just be
Yeah.
afraid of it like incriminating me with something terrible.
I mean, once you've said it and once it's written down somewhere,
Exactly.
there's no going back. I talk far too much nonsense for that to be a reality, I think, Aaron.
Perfect.
Howibecameawave.com. That is where you can find me anyway. You can nail that one to the mast for sure.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time, Pat. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Aaron. Mind yourself. Cheers. Bye bye
Thanks,
bye.
bye. Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, so we hope that you enjoyed and would consider subscribing, giving it a like on YouTube, or a rating anywhere else. We also have some exclusive episodes only available on Spotify, which features interviews with the likes of Kim Deal, Ron Mail of Sparks, Jacob Slater of Wonder Horse, Maria Kelly, Gavin Friday, and many more. So check those out if you're so inclined. Otherwise, thank you for listening and see you next time.